It seems foolish to deny that incredible things constantly happen in our world. Some people encounter them often, some rarely, and some only once. Those who have never experienced anything like this probably dismiss such stories or scoff and roll their eyes. But that's a mistake. I've had a few encounters with unexplainable events myself, and I know how some people react negatively to stories about strange occurrences. Still, I want to share one mysterious incident that happened to me on a late-night highway. It was the early winter of 1986, and I was a junior at the State Polytechnic Institute. Back then, students were often sent to help out with local farms for a few weeks, in a program that mixed volunteer work with required service. That fall, a group of us was sent to a small farming town about 50 miles from the city to help harvest potatoes, carrots, beets, and cabbage. In our large group, the gender imbalance was painfully obvious. Dozens of young men and only 3 girls, and even they were from a particularly shy category. But youth needs not only study and work, but also feelings, excitement, and romance. I got lucky and met a pretty local girl. We had a whirlwind student farm romance that lasted a while. After the harvest ended, we continued seeing each other for several months. On weekends, she would come to the city to visit me, or I would go to her town. One evening, on my late return from the village, something incredible happened. Lovers, as you know, lose track of time. I got so caught up that I stayed longer than usual. When I realized it, the last suburban bus had already left, and I had to find another way back. I could have stayed overnight, a tempting option, but I had to be at the institute early in the morning. So I decided to hitchhike back to the city, keeping the overnight stay as a last resort. An hour passed, and the cold winter night had fully descended, but I still couldn't catch a ride. I was freezing and about to head back to the village to my sweetheart when finally a flatbed truck pulled over. "Where are you headed?" asked the driver, an older man. "To the city," I replied. "I'll take you to the bus depot. You can figure it out from there," he agreed. Grateful, I climbed into the warm cabin. We exchanged a few small talk phrases, then fell silent, each lost in our own thoughts. I thought about the girl, about her warm embrace. The driver seemed tired after a full day on the road. He fiddled with the radio, found nothing interesting, and turned it off, slowing the truck. Then, a red warning light on the dashboard blinked, the engine coolant temperature. We stopped, and the driver climbed out, lifted the hood, opened the radiator cap, and a cloud of steam erupted. Muttering under his breath, he poured water from a canister. We stood there for a moment, smoked a quick cigarette, then continued on our way. This is an important moment in the story, so skeptics can't claim that we both imagined what happened next. We moved at a slow pace, about 30 miles. The night was pitch black, illuminated only by the truck's headlights, which cast diffuse yellow semicircles into the darkness, gradually fading into infinity. I watched the pale light from the beams illuminate mile markers and road signs. The road was deserted, no other vehicles, neither oncoming nor passing. And then, far ahead on the road, right in the headlights, I saw a dark human figure. The shape grew larger, standing directly in our lane. I glanced at the driver. His face was focused, eyes wide open. He was awake. The figure, clearly a woman, an elderly lady, faced us. She wore a dark coat with a light scarf or shawl over her head. About 30 feet away, she stood still, and the truck did not slow down or swerve. I fidgeted, wanted to shout stop, but my voice vanished. The old woman, level with the bumper, simply disappeared. No sound of impact, and the driver made no attempt to steer around her. The truck moved straight ahead, unchanged. Shock gripped me. Cold sweat broke out. Goosebumps ran down my spine. I froze, not knowing what to do. The driver looked at me calmly and said, "You saw it too, didn't you?" I nodded. He slowed down, pulled over onto the shoulder, and said, "Don't worry, we didn't hit anyone." Then, after a pause, he began explaining. 2 months ago, there was an accident here with casualties. Among them was this elderly woman. That's the ghost you just saw. This is the 3rd time I've witnessed it. I hadn't told anyone before. Now you've seen it for yourself. Hand me the flashlight from the glove compartment. I took the flashlight, turned it on, shined it on the bumper. No marks of impact. Looked under the truck. No one there. The driver smiled. "See? Now hand me the flashlight." I did, and he slowly scanned the roadside with the beam, revealing morning wreaths attached to trees. Everything confirmed it. The old woman was indeed a ghost. We continued driving in silence, lost in thought. We reached the city without incident. As we said goodbye, he said, "You're young, so keep quiet about what you saw. Better for your own good." I heeded his advice and kept the story to myself for years. Only after the collapse of the Soviet Union, when media started discussing the paranormal openly, did I share the tale of that night on the road. Many laughed, doubting the truth. With the passing years, looking back, I understand. Our world is full of phenomena that science hasn't explained yet. What once seemed supernatural may one day become a normal part of life. Ghosts and paranormal events will find their explanations, and in the future, children may even study them in school. Fear and doubt will be replaced by knowledge and understanding. This happened late in the evening on December 30th, 2004. So many years have passed, yet I still remember every detail. Events like that never fade. We were heading home after a month-long shift, riding together in a company shuttle bus back to our small town. The sky was heavy with grey clouds. It had been dark for hours, and everyone just wanted to get home to warmth and comfort. The highway was packed hard with snow, but patches of ice made the bus slide more than once. Our driver, a local man named Frank, handled the wheel carefully, moving slow, muttering under his breath. At a fork in the road, he suggested cutting about 25 miles by taking an old rural back road through fields and woods. We all knew that road, so no one objected. We left the main highway. At first, everything seemed fine. After 3 or 4 miles, a blizzard hit us out of nowhere. The snow fell so thick, I had never seen anything like it in my 40+ years. Visibility nearly vanished. We had to stop for about half an hour. And just as suddenly as it began, the blizzard stopped. But in that short time, the road had been buried so completely, it nearly blended with the surrounding fields. The wind pushed the clouds away. The moon came out, covering everything in a silver glow. It became strangely bright and quiet, like something unreal. Snow had piled up so high that in places the wheels nearly sank to the axle. The bus crawled forward, sometimes almost blindly. A few people grumbled that we should have stayed on the highway. Still, spirits were mostly high. The shift was over, money earned, the new year ahead. Music played softly up front. Someone passed around a bottle. Others played cards. The women talked non-stop. The open field ended, and we entered a stretch of snow-covered forest. The road here was less buried, and the driver picked up a little speed. Then he said, "Look, someone is standing ahead." We pressed against the windows. On the shoulder stood a very tall figure, easily over 7 feet, a dense, shapeless mass of black against the white snow. There was something deeply wrong about it. The chatter inside the bus stopped instantly. We moved closer. The forest rose like a wall on both sides. There was nowhere to turn off. The driver asked quietly what we should do, adding that if he stopped, he might not be able to get the bus moving again. Everyone agreed. Do not stop, just drive past. We passed within just a few feet of it and saw clearly. It resembled a person in a long cloak or robe with a hood reaching down to the ground. No arms or legs were visible. The hood covered half of what should have been a face. But there was no face, only black emptiness, and what looked like a wide open mouth frozen in silent laughter. It radiated an icy, inhuman hatred, so intense it made my skin crawl. Later we realized almost everyone had felt it. It reminded me of a towering skeleton draped in black, the way death is often pictured. Yet it moved slightly, turning toward us as if watching us pass. There were no footprints anywhere, no tire tracks, no animal prints, nothing, just smooth snow. We sat there in a stunned silence. Only one religious woman began whispering prayers. The road curved gently. The figure slipped out of view behind us. Then someone from the back shouted that it was gone. The driver yelled, asking if we had all seen it, if it was behind the bus. People answered that it was nowhere, as if it had evaporated. The driver pushed the bus as fast as the road allowed. Inside, a heavy silence lingered. After a while, we began arguing about what we had seen. 2 explanations emerged. One was supernatural, that it was something not of this world. The other was that someone had staged a cruel prank. But the nearest town was about 12 miles away. Who would stand in freezing darkness out there? Hardly anyone used that road even in good weather. And the biggest question was where it could have gone. On open white snow, a black shape cannot simply vanish. There were no tracks, and it had not stood still. It had turned toward us, as if following us with its gaze. That was how we saved 25 miles. It took us 3.5 hours. What we encountered on that winter back road, I still cannot explain. This unexplained incident took place on a lonely highway in the late 1990s. Years have passed since then, but every time I think about that night, the same uneasy tension creeps back into my chest. The kind of nervous pressure you feel when something truly unnatural brushes too close. That unforgettable night, my co-workers and I were driving back from a job in a Ford Econoline van. We had just finished building a vacation home deep in the remote forests of northern Montana and were heading back towards Seattle. Strange things sometimes happen on highways, especially in isolated areas, and most of the time you can come up with some kind of logical explanation. But what we witnessed that night remains a mystery to this day, and not a pleasant one. It was a cold, muddy autumn night. A thin, persistent drizzle fell from low, heavy clouds. Pale fog crawled along the ground. The region was sparsely populated. Small towns were separated by long stretches of empty road. The darkness was absolute. Not a single light in the sky or on the horizon. The highway lay deserted, and our lone vehicle cut through the night, headlights slicing across the sleeping landscape. It all happened just after we had started moving again. We had pulled over briefly onto the shoulder for a quick stop. No one was asleep, so all 5 of us inside the van witnessed what occurred only seconds later. We had driven no more than a couple 100 yards from where we had stopped, when someone suddenly runs across the road in your high beams. You usually see them clearly. You can make out more than just a shape. Depending on distance and speed, you might notice clothing, shoes, a face, even small details. But that night, what crossed the highway was something none of us had ever seen before. Our headlights pulled a tall, shapeless silhouette out of the darkness. A dense, impenetrable mass of blackness moving slowly across the pale layer of fog hovering above the asphalt. It resembled a person wearing a long hooded robe, the hood obscuring what should have been a face. Yet whatever was beneath that hood was anything but human. No limbs were clearly visible. Our driver muttered a sharp curse and slammed on the brakes. The figure stopped. Then it turned toward us. All of us felt it. That piercing, unpleasant sensation of being watched. A second later, the thing began moving toward the van. Its motion was unnatural, almost as if it were gliding in short, sideways steps. There was no mistaking it. The air itself felt charged with threat. Every person inside the van saw the same black silhouette. Later, one of the guys admitted that at first, he thought it might be someone from a nearby rural town, trying to stage some kind of roadside scam. But in that moment, nearly all of us were frozen, except the driver. He was an older man with decades of life behind him. He quickly made the sign of the cross and began whispering the Lord's Prayer. At the same time, almost instinctively, he threw the van into reverse and hit the gas. The instant he began praying, the black entity stopped, and then it disappeared. Not ran, not jumped aside. It simply vanished into the darkness, as if it had never existed. It had been no more than 30 yards away. If it had moved physically in any direction, we would have seen it. Instead, the headlights suddenly illuminated the empty road behind where it had stood, revealing everything clearly. Whatever that formation had been, it had not reflected light. For the rest of the journey, our driver pushed the van at the highest speed he dared. The rest of us slowly recovered from the shock. To this day, we still don't know what we encountered. Some unknown creature, or something not of this world. But one thing is certain. It was not human, and it did not have good intentions toward us. The campfire hissed and threw jagged shadows across the pine trunks. The forest breathed cold around us. We sat in a tight circle, and only the snapping of burning wood disturbed the silence. Mark, the old-timer at the remote hunting lodge, narrowed his eyes through the smoke and spoke in a low voice. "Ever heard of the black stretch?" "The what stretch?" Tyler smirked, tossing a stick into the flames. But there was something slightly forced in his laugh. Mark slowly looked at each of us, as if making sure we were really listening. "There's a road that cuts between the spruce groves. The asphalt's darker than the night itself. Locals say you should never brake there, and whatever you do, don't look in your mirrors." A dry branch cracked sharply in the fire, making Megan flinch. "That's ridiculous," she muttered, though her eyes flickered with unease. Mark lowered his voice. There was a trucker, Jake, driving back late one night, took that road. Suddenly, he sees a girl standing on the shoulder, wearing a white coat, her hand raised like she's asking for a ride. He slows down, opens the door. Nothing. No one there, no footprints. He figures he's just tired, keeps driving. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he catches something in the side mirror. She's standing in the middle of the road behind him, only she doesn't have a face, just a smooth grey mask where it should be. Somewhere in the darkness, a branch snapped. We all turned at once, but beyond the trees there was only shifting shadow. Mark paused, then continued even quieter. Jake floors it, but the road feels like it's looping. Same trees, same curves, and every time, she's ahead of him again. This goes on until sunrise. When he finally makes it out, his clock is 3 hours behind, gas tank empty, and his eyes. Mark stopped for a moment, as if recalling something unpleasant. He said he could feel her staring at him, even though she didn't have any. A gust of wind lifted sparks from the fire. Something rustled off to the side again. This time it was too close, and even Tyler stopped smirking. We exchanged glances. The forest stood like a black wall, and between the trees, it seemed, just for a second, a white shape flickered. Or maybe it didn't. Mark didn't take his eyes off the darkness as he finished. They say 20 years ago, a hitchhiker disappeared on the black stretch. Her belongings were found in a ditch. She wasn't. Now she waits for anyone foolish enough to stop. So if you ever see a white coat on that road, hit the gas, and don't you dare look back. We sat in silence. Even the fire seemed to crackle more softly. The wind carried a faint whisper from the trees, and I would swear that someone was standing out there between the pines, watching us. In my life, 2 unexplainable events occurred on the same stretch of road, where something paranormal with time seemed to happen. This took place 15 years ago. I should note that in both cases, I was completely physically and mentally healthy, without a trace of alcohol or drugs. One summer night, I was driving to a friend's house in a small town about 100 kilometers away. The route passed through familiar rolling terrain, fields, forests, on a single-lane asphalt highway winding in places. At night, the road was nearly deserted. In general, it was an ordinary routine trip lasting a maximum of an hour and a half. Somewhere in the middle of this route, I approached a roadside forest, which usually takes 15 minutes to cross. I knew the road well, having driven it many times. After leaving the last village, the speed limits ended, and a large, powerful imported truck overtook me at a significant speed. It had extra headlights that glowed brightly, like a Christmas light display, illuminating everything around. I fell in line behind it. I thought to myself, wow, lucky me. I wouldn't risk driving this fast at night with my standard headlights. At that moment, my friend called, asking, "Where are you? When will you arrive?" I explained my location, added that I was following the truck and would arrive in about half an hour. Conversation ended, and I drove on through the forest. I continued driving. Another call from my friend, still worried. "Half an hour has passed, where are you?" I looked at the clock. Time was correct, yet the forest still loomed like a black wall along the road. No side roads to turn onto. I tried to figure out what was happening. Another call came, and I was on edge. The forest didn't end. Essentially, I spent 4 hours following that bright truck, through a forest that normally takes 15 minutes, all while listening to occasional sarcastic calls from my friend about my mental level. I couldn't overtake the truck. My car didn't have enough power. Eventually, the forest ended suddenly, dawn broke, and the truck disappeared around the first bend. I continued to my destination on schedule. There was no explanation. The second event happened on the same road, with the same friend, going in the opposite direction, also at night. We were driving an old, heavily worn Soviet-era truck. I was behind the wheel. The truck was very tired, barely exceeding 60 kilometers per hour, and other cars occasionally overtook us. I was happy to follow an old medium-duty truck, moving steadily at 40 to 50 kilometers per hour. The trip was calm. We could relax and talk. The stretch flew by unusually quickly. Upon arrival, we checked the time. Our departure and arrival times matched our phones. Although normally, the trip should take at least 2 hours, but it had only taken half an hour. No logical explanation was ever found. In 2016, a mysterious incident happened on a highway in the Northern Territory. Shortly before it occurred, my friend Mark called and asked me to pick him up from the Maple Station train stop, so he wouldn't have to spend extra hours traveling to Pineville. This plan saved a lot of time. Normally, the trip to Pineville takes 4 to 5 hours. I arrived, picked him up, and we headed home. Not far from a small recreation lodge called Oak Ridge, Mark suddenly shouted, "Samuel, stop, quickly!" His expression was urgent and uncompromising, leaving me no doubt that something was seriously wrong. I slowed down, pulled over, and asked, "What's going on?" He replied, "Nothing, just, I need a moment." But the shaking hands, pale face, and nervous energy gave him away. I thought he might just be stressed from the train ride. While we were stopped, a Nissan Pathfinder drove past us. I glanced at Mark. He was standing there, frozen. I said, "Get in, let's go. I still have work to do." He lingered for about 10 minutes before finally getting in. I was frustrated at the wasted time. Once we resumed driving and picked up speed, about a mile later, a terrifying sight appeared ahead. 2 vehicles had collided. The Nissan Pathfinder that had passed us and a Mitsubishi Outlander. A head-on collision. We jumped out to help. The driver of the Nissan was dead, while everyone in the Mitsubishi survived, though the vehicles were badly damaged. Naturally, we called the police and an ambulance. I warned others on the road to stay careful. Later, Mark explained why he had shouted. He said he saw his deceased mother, who had passed away 3 years earlier, standing in front of the hood with her arms crossed, shouting, "Stop!" He screamed instinctively, but didn't tell me the truth right away, so I wouldn't laugh. It seems that if he hadn't screamed or seen her, we might have ended up dead on that road. Apparently, she had been there with a clear purpose: to claim someone for the other side at that exact moment. My husband is an experienced long-haul truck driver, and occasionally I get to travel with him on his routes. Thanks to that, I've seen many regions of the country. He never gets bored, and I find it fascinating as new landscapes constantly unfold outside the window. On the road, many things happened, and I witnessed a lot. But one particular trip stuck in my memory like a bitter splinter. This happened last year. As usual, we drove through the night and stopped to sleep in a small roadside pull-off. We had dinner, settled in, and fell asleep. Suddenly, we both woke up at the same time. We jumped and screamed in terror. After a few seconds, we came to our senses and stared at each other in silence. My husband quickly got behind the wheel and we drove off. We drove the entire way in silence, slowly calming down. Only at the next large rest area did we start talking about what had happened. It turned out we had almost identical dreams. My husband dreamed that our 9-year-old son was lying on the side of the road, covered in blood, dying. I dreamed that our son was on the road under the wheels of a truck, crushed, with one arm severed. The fear was overwhelming, both physically and emotionally. We called home. Our son was sleeping peacefully. My husband said that, according to other long-haul drivers he knows, there are stretches of road where it's impossible to sleep without having terrifying nightmares. But the fact that we had nearly identical nightmares shocked us deeply and left a lasting impression on our hearts.